Apple Blitz with Anthony Rivardo and Matt O'Leary.
What is going on? Welcome into another episode of Big Apple Blitz. Here we go. It's starting already, Anthony. What's going on? Oh, look at that smile. A rejuvenated Anthony Rivardo here on Big Apple Blitz.
I'm feeling great. I woke up today and it was like Christmas morning. I'm still on the West Coast, so the news broke early on the East Coast. I was not even close to being awake by the time we got the great news, but Daniel Jones to the bench for the remainder of the season, and Big Apple Blitz QB1 Tommy DeVito into the starting lineup. Skipping over Drew Lock, totally okay with that. Let's see the Tommy Cutlets, baby. This is exactly what I needed to bring me back to some level of excitement to watch the New York Giants for the rest of the year, because before this, I had zero excitement. Didn't even want to watch them for the rest of the season, but now that I get to watch some Tommy DeVito play, I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, when this news came out, it was right after 8 o'clock in the morning East Coast time. And my initial reaction was like, oh my God, I got to send this to Anthony. And then I sent it and forgot you were on the West Coast. I'm like, I'm going to feel like such a dick if I just woke him up at 5 o'clock in the morning. But he might be able to take solace in that it's very good news for him that Daniel Jones is no longer his quarterback. So maybe he'd forgive me. But very glad that we're doing the show a couple hours later again with the time difference and the travel. They finally benched Daniel Jones after 6 years. It finally feels like this is the end, because not only did they go to Tommy DeVito, but they have made Daniel Jones the third string quarterback, which means he will most likely be inactive as well. So he might be finally done. This might be it.
Yeah, they said he is the inactive third string quarterback, which is just music to my ears. It means that, like we were talking about a few days ago, that injury clause, we were like, he can't even be the backup. He can't go anywhere near the field, because if he gets injured in any way and can't pass that physical in March, the Giants are screwed with that injury guarantee. But the Giants are doing the right thing. They're benching him. They're making him inactive. We won't see any more Daniel Jones. We don't have to worry about that injury clause. The Giants are inevitably going to cut him at the beginning of free agency, probably even before free agency even rolls around. They'll free up $19 million in salary cap space. Yes, they'll have to eat a $23 million dead cap charge. That's more than okay. You get to move on from Daniel Jones. You get to free up some money, and you get to move on to a brighter future. Now, obviously, looking ahead to who the quarterback is going to be in the offseason, that's going to be difficult. That's going to be the biggest challenge. But, hey, we at least have some quarterback play that we can stomach watching for the rest of the season, and we'll figure out the rest of the quarterback situation in the offseason.
Anthony, who are you going to blame now that Daniel Jones is no longer the Giants quarterback? NYC TV, NYC wants to know.
I'm going to blame Joe Schoen for signing Daniel Jones to such an egregiously bad contract. I said it that offseason many, many times. Franchise tag was always the move. I'm going to blame Daniel Jones for this team being 2-8, because he is the 6th-year starting quarterback, and he should have been better than he was. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of blame to go around at the end of the day. Brian Daboll hasn't been perfect either, but look at his stats. Daniel Jones is the worst quarterback that's ever started 6 seasons in a row.
24, 44, and 1. It's kind of a miracle that the leash was as long as it is. He started 69 games for the New York Giants over the course of 6 years. Best season came in 2022 when he had the 15 passing touchdowns. Also added, 7 rushing touchdowns? I could scroll down and see for myself. As well. Yes, 7 rushing touchdowns. So 22 total touchdowns, arguably his best season. I know he had the playoff win on the road in Minnesota. I'm sure a lot of Giants fans thought that, maybe this was Daniel Jones finally figuring it out with the offensive-minded head coach. Unfortunately, big regression the last 2 years. Enough is enough. It's something that had to be done. They need to transition away from Daniel Jones as the franchise signal caller, and they'll go to Tommy DeVito now for the remaining 7 games. And I guess I'm going to pitch this to you. I don't want to I don't want to be the negative guy here. I'm not. I'm happy for you. I don't think anyone should have to watch Daniel Jones for 6 years. Is there any concern that Tommy DeVito repeats and ruins the tank for a second year in a row?
Yeah, there is. There's definitely concern. I think he's going to win the Giants a couple games down the stretch. Like, I don't think that they're going to continue to lose every single game. I don't think this roster is that quarterback. I mean, listen, there's no way they should have lost last week to the Panthers. They lost because Daniel Jones had several opportunities to move the ball downfield or give the Giants scoring opportunities in the red zone, and he squandered every single one of those opportunities somehow. So the Giants lost because of their bad quarterback play last week. I think that at the very least, Tommy DeVito gets rid of some of those blow-up plays. Even if he's not necessarily playing great football, I don't expect him to. He's still a third-string quarterback at the end of the day. He's not going to make those egregious errors that you see from Daniel Jones that cost you football games, in my opinion. I think he proved last year that he can at least be serviceable and win you some games. So he probably is going to ruin the tank. However, this is a point that I just made on the Fireside Giants episode we recorded. The Giants last year had Daniel Jones preventing them from drafting a quarterback. This offseason, they have nothing preventing them. They have to die for whatever quarterback they get. So even if Tommy DeVito wins 2 games down the stretch, and they're not picking first, they're picking 7th. That's different picking 7th this year than it was picking 7th last year, because last year they still had a $40 million quarterback under contract. This year they won't have a $40 million quarterback under contract, so no matter what, they have to get the quarterback. They can't settle and lie to themselves and say, okay, at least we can take the playmaker at 6 and see if we can make things work with Daniel Jones. There's no Daniel Jones. There's no making it work with anybody. You're getting a quarterback no matter what. So whether you're selling the farm and trading 3 first-round picks to move up and get the QB, maybe that's not ideal. Maybe you don't want that to happen, but it's going to have to happen. The Giants don't have any alternative. They have to get a quarterback this offseason. So while he might hurt the tank and he might hurt the Giants' chances of getting a top 2 to 3 pick, he's not going to prevent them from getting a quarterback, because no matter what, the Giants have to get a quarterback this offseason.
So we just got, while you were talking, a Jordan Schultz tweet that is, I'm going to pull up right now, that I want to get your reaction to. He says, sources, while ownership has suggested he'll return, there is a growing sense that Giants coach Brian Daboll is coaching for his job over the final 7 games. That's part of why he chose Tommy DeVito over Drew Lock as the starting quarterback. More info: the relationship between Daniel Jones and the Giants has been described as a bit awkward, multiple sources say, especially with the organization publicly exploring other quarterback options, including during Hard Knocks this past offseason. Quote, it was like flirting with someone new while your date is still at the table. Just your reaction to that entire comment.
I mean, I'm not surprised by any of that. The relationship looked awkward. I mean, the Giants were looking for Daniel Jones' replacement just a year after signing him to a $40 million per year contract. That's definitely awkward. Now, it was the right thing to do, and I wish that they got that quarterback this past offseason. But yeah, it was awkward for him. Oh, well, boo-hoo. Keep crying about it, Daniel Jones. I don't care about your feelings personally. And then when talking about Brian Daboll and his future, that also doesn't surprise me. The way that the Giants have been maneuvering, it feels like Brian Daboll has been coaching for his job. And so all of this feels like stuff that I already knew. It's just good to get a little bit more confirmation from a reported source and a trusted one in Jordan Schultz. But again, with Tommy DeVito, this is the thing. A lot of Giants fans are upset Tommy DeVito is going to start. They're like, okay, we don't want to win games down the stretch. Then we're not going to get a quarterback. But then you have to kind of put it into perspective. Do you value just getting the quarterback, or do you want the quarterback to be coached by Brian Daboll? Because if you want Brian Daboll to draft, develop, and coach this quarterback, then you need the Giants to win at least 2 games down the stretch. If you don't care whether or not Brian Daboll is coaching that quarterback, then you probably want the Giants to lose as many games as possible, get a new coach, and get a new quarterback. But if you do want Daboll here, Tommy DeVito is the right move, because you want him to win a couple of games, save Daboll's job, and give Daboll the opportunity to coach the next QB.
Yeah, that's another really good point on your part, because like it's one thing getting the quarterback is part of the equation. That's obviously a major part of the equation. It also matters significantly who is coaching said quarterback. And it will be dependent, on who that coach is to see how far that quarterback would succeed. I'm feeling very mixed on this, because I can see both sides of the equation here. The first is, yeah, Daboll did a really good job with Josh Allen. There were signs of him doing something good with Daniel Jones in 2022. There's some things you like about him as a play caller through his Giants tenure. So I understand those who are on the side of wanting to keep Dable. I also see the side, though, I'm not going to lie, for those who want to see the Giants lose out, get the number 1 overall pick so that you could potentially attract the best GM and head coach combination, because that makes the job a little bit more appealing to someone else. Now, it's kind of like, do you take what you know, or do you go back into the box and see, the mystery box, and see if you pull something out better? It's risky, but where do you fall on this? Are you someone who wants to see Daboll back and don't mind if they win a couple more games here?
Dude, in an ideal world, I probably want Dable back and Joe Shane gone. I just don't think that's possible. I think they all have to get fired. If you're going to fire one, you have to fire the other. The thing is, with this situation, this quarterback situation, the Giants are skipping over Drew Lock and going straight to Tommy DeVito, the third string. That tells you everything you need to know about the way that Brian Daboll feels about the roster that his general manager handed him. The fact that the Giants didn't bring in a legitimate competitor to Daniel Jones this offseason, we always knew that was going to be an egregious error. But now look at it. It's like catastrophically bad that they only brought in Drew Lock on a 1-year, $5 million deal as a backup quarterback. It was a joke from the start. They didn't get anybody who could push Daniel Jones. They did not get a quarterback that Brian Daboll believes can win games down the stretch of the season. Joe Shane just completely overlooked the quarterback position. He said, oh, we'll try to draft a quarterback in the first round, but if we don't get the one of the 3 top guys, screw it, we're just not going to address quarterback. That was always ridiculous and stupid. They should have done more. They should have traded up. They should have taken a QB at 6. I said J.J. McCarthy was a solid selection at number 6 overall. Hell, look at Bo Nix. The Giants should have walked away from that first round with a QB. Yeah, Wild Wave says it. Giants should have drafted Bo Nix. Listen, it might be revisionist history. A lot of us maybe didn't want Bo Nix, but it's not our job to pick these players. It's the general manager. We're obviously not going to be as smart as the GM. At least that's what we hope. But when we start predicting things and having opinions on things, and we are more right than the GM, that's when we know that the GM is doing a bad job. And so we always knew that the quarterback room was a problem and that there should have been more talent added to it. Drew Lock, Daniel Jones, Tommy DeVito was never enough, and we're seeing that right now. So I want Daboll back, but I'm fine to blow it all up in the offseason. However this thing goes, whatever they got to do something. The one thing that I don't want to see is the Giants do the same bullshit that they did with Dave Gettleman, where they fire the head coach and scapegoat him and keep the GM. If you're going to get rid of one, get rid of both of them.
Yep, I am in a full agreement with you there. If the Giants are to move on, you might as well just do both. Clean slate, have the GM and the head coach on the same timeline. I think that's your best opportunity for success. Another talking point I wanted to bring up, people look at this year's quarterback class and they don't think it's nearly as good as the one from a year ago, where you had, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and Caleb Williams all go in the top 3, and then J.J. McCarthy and Bo Nix go later on in the first round. And in Michael Penix, too. Can't forget about Michael Penix. And then they compare that to Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jalen Milroe, and they go, well, last year you had an opportunity where you could have landed, in their eyes, a franchise quarterback. This year, too many questions. I don't really like this quarterback class. Does this give you any pause, or are you still thinking that someone could come in and be that franchise guy in this class?
It's so tough to say. I think that there's potential for all 3 of those guys that you mentioned. I think Cam Ward can be a franchise quarterback. I think the same as Shedeur Sanders, and I think the same of Jalen Milroe. However, I think all of those guys are far more dependent on where they get drafted than the guys in last year's draft class. I like Milroe needs a system built around him. The same way Lamar Jackson got drafted by the perfect team. Everybody compares Milroe and Jackson, so I'm just going to make that easy comparison here. Lamar Jackson went to the Baltimore Ravens, who literally built an entire offense, playbook, and scheme around him. If Jalen Milroe gets drafted to a team that's dedicated to doing exactly what the Ravens did for Lamar, he might be a very good player. Not saying he's going to be Lamar, but he might be a very good player. However, if he goes to a team that's not dedicated to build an entire offense, system, and playbook around him, he might just be out of the league in 2 years. So he's far more dependent on a scheme and a team that drafts him than I would say Drake May was. I think you could have thrown Drake May into 32 different fires and he would have come out 32 different ways burned and still a franchise quarterback. So I just don't think it's the same for this draft class. However, if you believe in Brian Daboll's ability to develop quarterbacks and you want to see him take one of these guys, there are some names that would intrigue you and would tell you They have tools and traits that Brian Daboll likes. I like Brian Daboll's ability to develop quarterbacks. I want him to draft one of these guys. That's where you can go with this. Or you can go the other way and say, these are not franchise quarterbacks. We need to reboot everything and just rebuild this roster so that in 2 years from now, we could find a franchise quarterback. The Giants could go that path as well. But the way that it looks like they're going to go, they're probably going to retain Joe Schoen. They're probably going to let Joe Schoen pick a new head coach, which is just ridiculous. And that head coach is going to force a quarterback selection the same way that we did in 2019 with Pat Shurmur and Daniel Jones. And we're probably repeating the cycle for another 6 years. And I'm probably miserable for another 6 years. So we'll see how it goes. Oh, no. And again, another point that I made on Fireside Giants, we're talking about how we need to tank and we got to get the top pick for a quarterback. My same argument in Daniel Jones isn't preventing us from taking a quarterback this year. Like, we have no excuse. We have to take one. Also means there's nothing preventing us from actually hitting the free agency and trade market. So the Giants need a quarterback this offseason. They're going to get one. It could end up being Matt Stafford on a 1-year contract. Like, that's possible. It's not likely, but there is always a surprise quarterback that hits the I mean, it was Aaron Rodgers for the Jets a couple of years ago, and it could be him this offseason. Yeah, it's possible. So, yeah, like, I don't, but at the end of the day, there's always more quarterbacks on the market than what we think there's going to be. So I think the Giants have to be patient, but I am very curious to see who ends up coaching that quarterback. I think that's going to be the key determining factor in whether or not that quarterback becomes a franchise guy.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think in this class in particular, too, there's things that I like about each one of the quarterbacks, but I also think there's some red flags. And I think situation matters a lot for guys like that. And you said it just, so eloquently there, going through with, Drake May and what he could look like and all those, I think for Milroe, I think he's got to be hoping that Todd Monken gets a head coaching job and his team drafts him, because I think that would be the best recipe for success there with him. For the Giants here, a lot of future talk. A lot of talk on, the quarterback this week, obviously, after that news changes with the switch to Tommy DeVito. Haven't spent a ton of time in this episode talking actual Tommy DeVito yet, but just what are your expectations for him now as your starter?
I have a lot to say about Tommy DeVito because I think a lot of Giants fans have been playing revisionist history, and they're like, oh, Tommy DeVito sucks. He's not a good quarterback. Nothing's going to change. Like, I see a lot of fans saying that. The Giants won games down the stretch last year because of Tommy DeVito. That is objectively true. Everybody's like, oh, but he played with Andrew Thomas and Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley fumbled that Packers game away. The defense made a clutch stop, and Tommy DeVito led a 2-minute drill where Saquon Barkley didn't touch the ball many times on that 2-minute drill because they had to throw. He threw the ball into the end zone. He scored a touchdown. And he won them the game. He has shown the ability to do those things. He has stood in the pocket and thrown the ball deep and had accuracy throwing downfield to Jalen Hyatt, to Darius Slayton. He pushes the ball downfield. That's going to transform the offense right then and there. The entire offense is going to be different because they actually have a quarterback willing to throw the ball downfield. Tommy DeVito took a lot of sacks last year and held on to the ball too long, but that's not because he was staring down open receivers and taking sacks. He was staring down covered receivers and not being able to extend the play and take sacks. And here's the other key determining factor that I think is always worth bringing up. Had Tommy DeVito been a first-round draft pick who stepped in for 6 starts last year and went 3-3 with a primetime comeback win, the Giants fans would all be calling him a franchise quarterback. But because he was an undrafted kid out of Illinois, oh, he's never going to be a starter. He's just a backup. How do we know for sure? Let him play. Give him an opportunity. Keep an open mind to your Giants fans. That's what I'm going to say. I'm not saying he is a franchise quarterback. I'm definitely not saying that he's going to be one. But I am going to say, if any other rookie drafted in the first 3 rounds did that for the Giants last year, all of you would be calling him a franchise quarterback. So let's keep an open mind with Tommy DeVito. Let's let him play, and let's see if he actually got better going into year 2, because that's another thing. Everybody talks about how he had all these shortcomings last year. Oh, he doesn't read the field well. Oh, he's not that accurate. Oh, he's not this. He's not that. He wasn't those things. It's not that he isn't those things. He hasn't been playing for 6 fucking years like Daniel Jones. Tommy DeVito has not hit his ceiling yet. He has only played 6 games as a starter in his career. And he didn't even have a training camp last year with the New York Giants. He was literally thrown into the fire in the middle of the season with minimal practice reps. Now He has starting experience under his belt. He has an entire offseason of growing. He has an entire training camp of practicing, and he's been on the roster through this regular season, and he's been in this situation before. So to assume that he's going to be terrible, to assume that he's going to be worse than he was last year, it's an asinine assumption. He might actually be better. He might be a serviceable starter. Again, I'm not banking on him being the franchise quarterback, and I'm not predicting that he will be, but I think Giants fans are playing a lot of revisionist history here. They're being very unfair to Tommy DeVito and for what he did last year for this team. I understand that it hurt us out of a draft pick, and that's why people are salty. That's why they don't like Tommy DeVito. I get it, but give the kid a chance. Keep an open mind. He might actually play some decent football. He could possibly be a serviceable starter. Just because he had some shortcomings in his game as a rookie doesn't mean he didn't make progress going into year 2. So let's see how he plays down the stretch.
Plumber Mo is very optimistic, and by the logo that he's got, the epic logo, I can see why. I know a lot of fans don't think DeVito is the future quarterback, but with some more experience, he could become the Brady.
Wow. No, that's bold. That's very, very bold. I don't think that quite is going to happen, but hey, nobody thought Brock Purdy was going to be decent, so it happens. I'm not saying that it's going to happen. I'm not making a prediction. I have to keep clarifying that because I don't want people to attack me. But it does happen every now and then. A shocking player rises from the ashes and becomes a starter. And if we do trust in Brian Daboll's ability to develop quarterbacks, and he picked Tommy DeVito over Drew Lock, then it tells me there's something about Tommy DeVito that he does like.
I'm sorry for my reaction while you were talking there. I do appreciate your answers, and I love doing the show with you, but I saw something out of the corner of my eye that created a visceral reaction, and I think when I pop it on the screen, you will understand why. It's a Photoshop.
Oh God!
Yeah.
For your sake, I pray that doesn't happen.
So I was fighting with a beat reporter today, a Jets beat reporter. Not fighting. Fighting's a stretch, but I disagreed with a beat reporter today. Because they said if the Jets decide to move on from Rodgers in the offseason and draft a first-round quarterback, maybe they should sign Daniel Jones to a bridge deal. And my rebuttal was, couldn't Tyrod, who's under contract for next year and better than Daniel Jones, be the bridge quarterback? And then they disagree. They think that Daniel Jones is better than Tyrod, which I don't personally agree with. My initial thought, I didn't respond, but my thought was, I know a lot of Giants fans who probably disagree with that, and I think you'd be one of those people.
I am absolutely one of those people. I think that if Tyrod Taylor were starting games for the Giants this year, they might have a winning record.
They might. That's not that crazy.
1-5 in those close games. That was a frustrating stat to hear Joe Shane keep referring to, like as if he's done some great work this year. I don't like that he was referring to that stat, but at the same time, it is a true stat. They are 1-5 in one-score games, and I think that they're probably 2-3 in one-score games, or 2-4. I mean, probably 3. And I'm thinking back on these games, they probably have 3 of those games flipped, and I don't know. They might be a decent team at that point. So I made this point as well on Fireside Giants. I'll make it here. This is a team that just basically lost their season out of pride. They're making this benching in week 11. This should have happened after week 1. We all knew after that game versus the Vikings how the season was going to go. They kept lying to themselves. Oh, but he looked decent in week 2 and 3. Oh, he played terrible again in week 4. Oh, he looked decent in week 5. Oh, he was bad again in week 6. After week 1, we all knew what we had here. Had they made a quarterback change in week 1, maybe we'd have a winning record. Maybe we'd be in the playoff hunt. But pride and privilege, because Daniel Jones has had an extraordinary amount of privilege for the last 6 years. Like he's untouchable, sent from God himself. The amount of pride and privilege that has cost this team games and cost jobs is unbelievable. So had they just, like I say all the time, you hire slowly and you fire quickly. Had they fired quickly and just benched him after week 1, season might be something. But instead, here we are in the bye week, season pretty much in the toilet.
Anything else on the quarterback change, Daniel Jones, Tommy DeVito, that you want to get into, or do we want to get into ripping the Jets a little bit before we get out of here?
Congrats, Giants fans. We finally have something to watch.
We did it. QB1, baby. I am excited to watch some Tommy DeVito myself. And the Jets are a joke. That was my reaction to the game yesterday. They didn't get blown out like they did the week before, 31-6. They lost 28-27. But this is a game with maybe the most misleading box score I've ever seen. Ever. Sorry, I have Twitter up. I should have the box score. So if you didn't watch the game, which don't blame you, you see Aaron Rodgers, 22 of 29, pretty good completion percentage, 184 yards on 6.3 yards per attempt. That's okay. 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 114.7 rating. It's very easy to go, well, those numbers are pretty good, and the Jets scored 27 points. How can we blame Aaron Rodgers for this game? They didn't get a first down until 2 minutes to go in the first half of this game. Their first 5 possessions, they went 3 and out or 4 and out. Then second half, the Jets realized, or late in the second quarter, then into the second half, the Jets remembered that they have Breece Hall, who's good at football. He gave him the rock. He averaged 5 yards a carry, scored a touchdown, had another touchdown on a check down. And they're able to score, but then the defense falls apart and lets up 2 scoring drives after taking the lead to pretty much ice the game. So you got it coming from both sides here. The defense just completely folded again this year, which has been a common theme. And offensively, Aaron Rodgers looked horrible for most of this game. He was missing open receivers, not seeing the field very well. Taking sacks in bad opportune times, throwing late or behind receivers. And I'm just like, I don't know what's left to do here. I don't know why there's still people on this boat at 3-8 that want to run this thing back and try to get it right next year with this same group. They just look like a defeated, checked out football team. And I can't believe that there are another 6 games that we have to watch of these same guys.
Yeah, I can't believe that there's still so much season left to play for both of our teams. It's like brutal, absolutely painful. I do wonder, though, do you think that if the Jets fired Hackett and had a legitimate offensive coordinator, that this season would have gone differently? Like, if we, because right now, it's like Aaron Rodgers basically calling the plays is what it feels like. Like, he's running the offense and he's running it poorly and the offense sucks and he sucks. He's been terrible. Absolutely. I completely agree with you. But what if they did hire a legitimate OC? Do you think that the season would have gone differently?
It's possible. I would just ask, like, how much pushback does Rodgers have? Is Rodgers allowed to push back, or does he have to do what this new OC wants to do? Because if they do what the new OC wants to do, well, then you'd probably get the Buffalo game that you had this year with Todd Downing when he called plays, where there was a ton of motion, some jet sweeps. They did some exciting things. And then a week later, the Jets go back to what they were doing with no motion, a stagnant offense, 5-yard speed outs all the way down the field, and no deep shots down the field. So I would like to think, yes, that it would be, but at the same time, I don't know if the quarterback would allow for that to happen, if you know what I'm saying here.
I get what you're saying, and it's really unfortunate that that's even a topic of conversation, that Aaron Rodgers has that kind of power to dismantle a team's offense, basically. But I don't know. What if they hired somebody from the LaFleur tree or from the McCarthy tree, somebody that he liked, somebody that he knew and he could collaborate with? I mean, that feels to me kind of redundant. Feels too similar to Hackett. But,
yeah.
What if there just was like a legitimate OC? Not Nathaniel Hackett. If there was somebody better, maybe things could have gone a little bit differently. I don't know what the ceiling of this team would have looked like even then, though. It's kind of tough to tell.
It is tough to tell. And I think the most disappointing part of all of this is you look at how the 2022 and 23 Jets played, and it was so easy to come away with the conclusion of, man, this team just really needs help at quarterback. But this 2024 Jets defense is nothing close to what they were the last 2 years. And it's frustrating what Joe Douglas did with that defensive line, because I think that really was the beginning of the downfall of this defense when they lost, Quentin Jefferson and Al Woods and Bryce Huff, and traded away John Franklin Myers for nothing. And, guys that they replaced those with, Hassan Reddick hasn't played much this year. And when he has, is banged up and hurt and doesn't look good. Jermaine Johnson goes down with an injury. Javon Kinlaw has been a really bad signing. Michael Clemens has been horrible every week trying to replace John Franklin Myers. And they're just not getting any sort of consistent pass rush, number one, but also they have no gap integrity in the run game. And it's just that adds to this too. So that to me, that's the frustrating part. I think if you had this version of Rodgers, which is, I don't know what, like the 22nd best quarterback in the league, maybe right now, with the 23 or 22 Jets defense, maybe they're, I'm not gonna say like 8-3, but maybe they're, I don't know, 6-5. They have 3 more wins on their season, something like that. But they just got issues everywhere, it feels like.
Does feel that way. It feels like there's issues on both sides of the ball all over the place. I mean, the Devontae Adams trade, I feel like we knew, I don't know, a lot of Jets fans probably thought that it was going to make a difference. I feel like I knew that it just wasn't going to make much of a difference at all. It was too little too late. And I feel like that's still the case. And I don't know. It's been disappointing to see. Hey, at least Breece Hall scored a couple touchdowns. At least he played well. You know, we've been talking about him and how disappointing he's been at times this season. You know, at least if we're looking ahead, you know, to the rest of the season or to next year, we could say, well, Breece Hall is probably, you know, his down year is probably a product of being trapped in a bad offense rather than him actually regressing. I think that's probably a positive to take away.
Yeah, I mean, the last 4 weeks, he's averaged right around 5 yards a carry. They just haven't given him the ball a ton. He still has yet to have a game where he's had 20 or more carries yet, which early on in the year, I understand, because he wasn't great the first, I don't know, 4 or 5 games of the year, but pretty much since the Buffalo game outside of Pittsburgh, the following week, he's been great. 113 yards, averaging 6.3 yards a carry. 3.2 against Pittsburgh isn't good, obviously, but then 5.0, 4.9, 5.2, 4.9 yards per carry. He had a 100 receiving yard game in there as well in the Pittsburgh performance. So that kind of makes up for the lack of rushing in that one. He's been a really good player in the second half of this year, and I think is a building block guy. Like, I just feel bad for Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. Like, those guys, it feels like they genuinely care and they're putting the effort in each week, and they're still playing up to their potential. But it feels like the rest, maybe not every other 51 guys on the roster, but the majority of the guys who are starting and playing, it's just like they don't care. They're going through the motions.
Yeah, and I think that's just kind of the product of a lost season. I've seen that way too many times in recent years with the New York Giants. I think that's actually what's going on the defensive side of the ball for the Giants, because the Giants defense looked great at the beginning of the year. Past few weeks, seems like nobody gives a shit. Nobody's trying. I think that's where the Jets are as well, just going through the motions. And that's like the worst place to be. And usually what that stems from is a lack of faith in the quarterback position. That's what I think it's been for the Giants. I think the defenders and even the players on offense, they just don't believe in the team's quarterback and his ability to score points. So if we're seeing similar things with the New York Jets, it probably means that these players don't believe in Aaron Rodgers anymore. You know, the guy who was pretty much brought in here to save this franchise and pick up these wins and turn this thing around. I think everybody's kind of seen through the BS by now and seeing that he's not what he used to be, and he's not going to be saving this franchise. I think that the Jets now, I think we've gotten enough evidence. We've gotten a large enough sample size. This Aaron Rodgers experience, I don't think it's going to work out.
No, I don't, which scares me about what they're going to do for the future here, because I think there's a world where Christopher Johnson wants Aaron Rodgers back in 2025. But there was a report from SNY earlier before the game, actually. Connor Hughes was reporting that something that's going to play a big factor in Aaron Rodgers' decision is if there's continuity and stability with the organization. So to me, that says, like, if he's sticking around, he wants the coaches and everyone back, which I don't think the Jets can do. So if Aaron Rodgers isn't okay with that, then by all means, please, just take your lumps on the by cutting bait. I think it's $49 million against the cap, which isn't great, but just move on and probably retire at that point.
Yeah, it's tough to eat those financials, though. I mean, is there a world where Jets fans are open to Aaron Rodgers returning? Like, if it's all overturned, new head coach, new OC, he doesn't have any involvement in any of that crap. He's not given any of the power that he was in the past. We're just rebooting the whole thing, but he's staying as the QB. If that's possible, I don't know if it is, but if it's possible and that's the way it goes, are Jets fans even open to that?
I feel like it's dwindling, unless maybe they draft a quarterback and have Rodgers, Jordan Travis, and the rookie quarterback in that quarterback room. But the people who want Rodgers back, like, that was more of a thing maybe 2 weeks ago. But with these last 2 games and how he's looked I just don't know how he's coming back at 41 next year and he's going to be more mobile than what he has been this year. If anything, it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, I just think I agree with that assessment. He's regressing, and I don't see a regression stopping. That's not really how that works. When you regress, you continue to regress year by year. And if we've seen this severe of a regression this season, I don't know. I can't imagine that next year he's going to have some sort of big bounce back. That feels like almost fans talking themselves into things like they did with Daniel Jones for 6 years.
It does feel like that. That's, you're trying to spin zone it into it's everyone else's fault and not the quarterbacks. And I'm not sitting up here telling you the reason why the Jets are 3-8 is Aaron Rodgers and only Aaron Rodgers. That's not fair either. But you know what doesn't help things in my eyes when everything goes wrong and he's, throwing his hands up on the field and looking into the camera like Jim Halpert from The Office and like shrugging, like he just has a horrible attitude when things are going bad. And I feel like it rubs off on the rest of the team, the whole organization. That was one of the big things why I wanted the Jets to move on from Robert Saleh. I know they've been 1-5 since they moved on from Saleh, but he just looked like a defeated man out there coaching the first few weeks of the year. And that's how I feel like Aaron Rodgers is playing and holding himself while on the field for the Jets this year.
Yeah, I totally agree. I really am surprised though that the firing of Robert Saleh didn't change anything for this team. Like looking back over the last several weeks, it feels like it's just been more of the same every single week. Like things have just continued to kind of devolve into craziness. Maybe we were a little bit too hopeful in the spark to be brought in by the interim head coach. Maybe that was just a little bit of conjecture that we were hoping for, but I am just surprised that it got worse. Like I think things have gotten worse for the Jets in many ways, and it is very surprising. But I guess that's going to be a conversation at the end of the season. I think Jets fans will need to reflect: was firing Saleh the right decision, or was it the wrong decision? I'm still going to stand by that it was the right decision. I just think everything they did following that firing was the wrong decision. I think that's where we probably are. But man, I don't know. It's really tough to see the path out of the tunnel here.
That it is, my friend. It is very hard to see the path out of the tunnel. I'm not going to do the revisionist history game. Like, I feel like there's been a lot of people dancing on the grave of the Jets and been like, see, it wasn't Saleh's fault. He was just a scapegoat. Like, I don't know. Saleh was pretty freaking bad the 3+ years he was here too. So I don't really want to hear it. There were many times over the years when Saleh was here that they didn't get up for big games, came out flat, unprepared, undisciplined. I wish I had an answer for how to fix this. I don't know. They need to rip up the carpets, fumigate, get all the dead weight out of here. They need a complete overhaul too, which I don't know if the Johnson family is willing to do. I think they're going to always want to meddle and be involved, and I don't see the path out of this with that being the case.
It's really hard to see the path out of this. I think for both of these teams that we're discussing, it's tough to see what the future holds and how to get out of this. For the Jets, though, now add them to the list for the New York Giants of competitors kind of vying for that top quarterback in next year's draft. I think that's definitely going to be a talking point this offseason, especially if the Giants and Jets finish close to each other in draft positioning, which is possible. The Jets could continue to lose out even, and end up with a top 5 pick. Giants very well could do the same, but right now 5-7, picking 5 and picking 7, very, very close. This could definitely become a Big Apple battle.
A Big Apple battle here on Big Apple Blitz. Giants with the 5th pick, Jets with the 7th pick. There's a lot of bad teams, so there's going to be a lot of teams vying for positioning in the top 10 here. I feel like any of these teams who are in the top 9, it would not shock me to see them move up the board, and someone's going to get screwed with a late win and drop from like 3rd to 8th.
That'll be the Giants for sure.
So, and then you could trade up. And then you could just load up picks and get Shedeur Sanders in here.
Like I said, man, the Giants have nothing stopping them this time. Like last year, they wanted to trade up. They wanted to draft a quarterback, but they would only go to a certain extent because, well, they had Daniel Jones under contract for another 2 years, and he's making $40 million per season. So they might as well get him a playmaker, make it work. But there's nothing stopping them this time. Like they have to just throw everything away in order to get this quarterback. We'll see if the Jets feel the same way, or maybe they're going to get trapped and be like, hey, we still have Aaron Rodgers under contract and he's willing to play another year, so we won't be desperate to get a quarterback. Maybe they should be. So it could be this upcoming offseason for the Jets could be a lot like this past offseason for the Giants. Totally possible.
God help us all. It's going to be
Seriously.
an interesting road. I am happy to report the Jets are on the bye this week, so I will not be suffering through a Jets game on Sunday. In fact, I got my outdoor Christmas lights delivered to the house this week, and I think I'm going to do morning Christmas lights go up, finish by around 12:30, sit in front of the TV and watch Red Zone for 7.5 hours after that.
There you go. That sounds like a nice weekend.
There we go. That's my plan. Giants back in action this week. We'll get into that on Thursday. Who they have this week? Sorry.
They will have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday.
Look at that.
I got to say, though, I love the bye week. This is my favorite New York Giants bye week, maybe ever. I went to the Chargers game yesterday. I saw Joe Burrow versus Justin Herbert under primetime lights. It was unbelievable. So much fun. And then I woke up the next morning to see Daniel Jones was benched. This is like the greatest 24 hours that I've had in the past 2 years. This was incredible. I absolutely elated today.
Well, I am glad that you had a great day. We'll be back on Thursday. We'll preview Tommy Cutlets going to take on the Tampa Bay Bucks. I'll enjoy my Jets on the bye, and I'm sure we'll get some storylines out for this coming Thursday and the following Monday. But that'll do it for us on this one, guys. Make sure to leave a like before you get out of here. I'm Matt. He's Anthony. We'll catch you next time.